The basics of carving any stone are the same, but different types of stone do behave differently. There are differences in hardness, but also the makeup of the stone affects the way it carves, the way it splits, the marks the tools make, the types of abrasives you may need to use to create a certain finish. To complete your sculpture, you will only need a few basic tools: a lump hammer, a claw and a flat chisel. A small dummy mallet and a point might also be useful. I will explain a little more about the tools as we go. So, using a soft pencil, draw the basic outline of your design. As you can see, I'm using the diagonal of the block, corner to corner. This will allow me to use the full dimensions of the stone. You might need to draw the image a few times until you produce the design that fits and looks right. Don't worry about any of the detail, just concentrate on the outside line. Okay, once you're happy with your outline, draw a second line around your image. Okay, so this is important. Before you start to use the tools, you need eye protection. Make sure you wear safety glasses. You can purchase a type that will fit over your own glasses. This will protect your eyes from grit and dust, but importantly from any small flecks of steel that may break away from the end of the chisel as you strike it with the hammer. But keep your eye protection on and there won't be a problem. I'm starting with a small dummy mallet and a mallet headed flat chisel. This mallet is nicely balanced and not too heavy, but a lump hammer and any flat chisel will do the job. Firstly, I'm scoring along the second outside line. Note the angle of the chisel. We don't carve straight down into the block, as this won't remove the stone but only result in getting the chisel wedged in. Don't hold the chisel too flat to the stone as it will just bounce across the surface. Practice adjusting the angle until you get it just right and get just the right amount of bite. Place the chisel on the line and carve away from it with a few sharp taps. move slightly away from the line you have carved and carve down in the same manner to create a V shape. Continue this process around the whole outline. Don't hold the chisel or the hammer too tightly and relax your shoulders. You do tend to tighten your grip as you concentrate, and this can be quite tiring. Practice altering the angle of the chisel and you will see how the stone breaks and how much control you have accordingly. You may need to go around the shape a few times to create this trench, which will act as a barrier, protecting the area of stone that we will carve later into the shape of the fish. We will bring the surrounding stone around the shape down, leaving the fish in relief. Be careful where you place the chisel when working close to the edge. Now we need to use the claw or scutch chisel. This tool has interchangeable teeth or bits. When blunt, you simply knock the old bit out and replace with a new bit. Okay, let's start to carve. We don't angle the chisel in at the moment, but just drive it straight in, flat to the stone, a fraction from the top edge. Make a few sharp taps and move on. At the corners, direct the chisel towards the centre of the stone, like so. And again, a few sharp taps will remove the stone. If you don't create this angle at the corners, the stone will shear down and break away in an uncontrolled manner because of the lack of resistance to the chisel. You get this resistance by carving into the bulk of the stone. You will notice the distinctive teeth mark impressions the claw leaves. Continue taking the edge off right round your block. The aim is to reduce all the stone that surrounds the fish down by degrees until we reach our desired depth and the fish is standing proud. Work up to the trench that we made earlier. Remember, angle into the centre of the stone when you get near the corner. Work right around the block, holding the chisel parallel to the stone. Once you have taken the edge off, work into the bulk of the stone. Practice angling the chisel into the stone. Alter this angle so the chisel bites and removes the stone without getting wedged in. Notice the slight alterations of the angle. This enables me to control the amount of stone I'm removing. You'll get the hang of this with just a little practice. This is all part of the roughing out process, so you don't need to worry about the rough or undulating surfaces you are creating at the moment. This will all be addressed at a later stage. You might notice I have drawn a line around the outside of the block. It's about 30mm or 1.25 inches down from the original surface. This will be the final depth that I want to carve down to. Remember, angle in to the centre at the corners and work towards the channel we created earlier. Be careful not to be too heavy-handed with the hammer when you carve up to the upstand of the stone. A few gentle taps will be more accurate than one hard blow. As I mentioned earlier, don't hold the tools too tightly. If you are using a small mallet and are finding it tiring, try using a lump hammer. This heavier hammer may make the job of removing the bulk of the stone a little easier. You can alter the angle of the chisel as you carve. You will see how the stone responds. Remember to carve into the bulk of the stone where possible. Working outwards will result in losing large areas that you want to keep. With there being no resistance at the edges, it will shear away. When you get down to the final depth, try and be a little more controlled with the chisel to make a more even finish. But don't worry too much, as this does take practice. Notice I'm using gentle taps to get a neater finish. The angle of the chisel is more important than brute force. Don't be disheartened if you knock off areas that you wanted to keep. Bound to happen, and your first sculptures will continually be redesigned as you go. Try to get the surface as neat as you can with an even depth all round, but this is the roughing out stage and we will come back to this surface to finish it later on. Using a hammer and flat chisel, we can now cut tight up to the actual outline of the fish. Angle the chisel straight down to cut away the excess. Place the chisel on the pencil line and carve down. Changing the angle of the chisel as necessary. Again, practice and experiment with the angle and notice the effects. Don't work any details into the thin areas yet, just carve around the outside. Also working towards the fish, removing the stone from the base with careful taps around the tail. Okay, so let's start to shape the fish. Firstly, the areas that will become the fins need to be reduced to about half their present depth. This will give us the room to curve the main body of the relief. The best tool to use is the flat chisel, but you can use the claw if you prefer. Be careful though not to be too aggressive, as it is quite a destructive tool. Firstly, score the line with a few sharp taps. Be extra careful near the edge, as we don't want it to shear. The chisel is slightly angled outwards. Again, be careful at the edge. Also, take care where the fin joins the tail. Once the line is scored, start to carve the area that will be the fin. Working in towards the bulk of the stone up to the score line. Notice, even when I'm carving along the edge, the chisel is angled slightly in. This will keep you in control of the stone. Keep scoring the edge as you go. If I was to carve outward, like so, the stone would shear and break randomly. Work from both sides in towards the middle of the fin area. Reduce the stone to about half its depth. Now repeat the process on the other side. Start to put some shape into the tail, working from the edges inward. Don't carve towards your edge or your fish might end up without a tail. I'm keeping the tip of the tail high and carving down, layer by layer, just a fraction at a time. Note the angle of the chisel. You must keep practicing altering the angle. Don't be afraid to let it bite into the stone. Eventually you will start to work in your own rhythm, but the angle of the chisel will constantly change. Now we can shape the main body of the fish. It'll be high in the centre and slope down both ways, and also from nose to tail. Start by carving up from the mouth and rounding the shape, steering the chisel to create a curve. You will need to take off more at the sides than the top surface. If you carve along the edge first, this will start the rounding process. Try to work in a pattern moving from one side of the body to the other and working along the sides where the fins join the body. Just take a fraction of the depth of the stone at a time. You will start to see the shape of the fish emerge. The different angles of the chisel will result in more or less stone being removed. Don't worry about the rough appearance and chisel marks that you create. This is how it should appear at this stage. Remember, don't go straight down into the stone, but don't allow the chisel to slide across the surface. Don't be afraid to cut the chisel in at quite a steep angle to achieve the bite. Then begin to lessen the angle with each tap. Work to a rhythm and follow a path around and along rather than in random areas. You'll mainly take down the sides of the body. Right, go back to where we started and carve from the mouth up to the middle. Not only do we want to carve from side to side, but also from mouth to tail. Again, I'm not carving in a random manner, but making and following a curve along the body. Once you have carved approximately halfway up the body, come from the tail end and repeat the process. The tail will dip from its tip, then rise up as it joins the body. The angle of the chisel will change as you work from the sides to the top, where you'll be taking less stone, therefore the chisel will be flatter. you can see it is rounded from both fin to fin and mouth to tail. You may have a flat area on the top, but leave that for the time being. Go around the base where it meets the fish and clear away any unwanted stone. Be careful not to cut in and damage the areas that will become the fins and tail. Work the fins into shape in a similar way as we work the body, giving them a roundness, starting by taking the edge off and rounding down to the base and up to the body. In awkward places, like where the fin joins the tail, you may need to change the direction you are carving to get the chisel in. Go over the area several times, taking the stone down thin layer by thin layer, concentrating on a rounded, flowing shape. As usual, don't angle straight down or be too shallow with the chisel, and work with a degree of uniformity. Work halfway along and then start from the other side. Work the other fin in. Go over the whole shape again, taking off a thin layer and concentrating on the overall shape, working in a methodical way. As I've already mentioned, if at the moment you find it difficult to control the flat chisel, up to this stage you can still use the claw. But do try to practice using the flat chisel occasionally, because as you progress to more challenging sculptures and more challenging stones, you will find it an invaluable tool. Notice how I'm using it to take fine layers off, but at the same time being aware I need to shape the stone. Look how the angle of the chisel is constantly changing. This will take practice, but at the moment just do your best. Make the body and the tail flow so there is a gentle curving shape to the fish. Notice how I am changing the angle of the chisel as I carve to create the curves. Refine the shape a little further by carving over the whole shape again, reducing it just a fraction at a time and defining where the fins meet the body. Any areas that you are not happy with on the fish or the base can be taken down with the flat chisel until you are satisfied. As you can see, I have now added a little more design to the relief sculpture, drawing in the mouth, head and a little more detail for the fins. Firstly, score along the line that separates the head from the body. Using the flat chisel, score away from the line, using a few sharp taps, then moving on. Then, working from the opposite direction, carve in towards the line you have scored, so the body slopes down slightly towards the head. Just take the stone down in thin layers. Once the head is proud, you can change direction with the chisel to help you round the shape. keep scoring the line to make a definite edge. You can also score around the side fin using the same method, but not as pronounced, as we only need to hint at this fin. To start the shaping of the fin, you will need to use your flat chisel, cutting down directly to create the shape. At the moment, just cut out the basic shapes, we will refine it later. To carve the mouth, cut a V shape. Again, you'll have to use the flat chisel to get a clean cut. Place the chisel on the line and use gentle taps at a slight angle away from the line to start to create the V. Do one side of the mouth, then the other. Don't try to get it too neat at the moment. We can use smaller tools to achieve this in the finishing process. To carve the eye, first score the line, directing the chisel straight down and using gentle taps, carve right round the disc. We want the eye to stand proud of the body, so now carve very gently up to the score line, reducing the surrounding area in thin layers until the eye is standing proud. Take particular care when getting close to the line and score down again if necessary to protect the eye. Notice how I'm reducing the stone around the circle and carving away from the disc I have created. Again, the final finish later will tidy the shape up. I'm going to work back on the base now using the claw. If you're already happy with your base, you may not need to do this. Just take a thin layer off and make the whole surface a little more uniform. Work from the outside edge in towards the fish. Gently neaten the stone up as you reach the edge of the relief. Using a straight edge, you can check for any unevenness. The background base will be left with chisel marks as a contrast to the surface of the fish, which we want to make as smooth as possible. This will make the relief stand out, showing the piece has been by hand. If you do possess a small chisel, you can now use it to emphasise and neaten any of the cuts you have made. If not, you can always use the corner of your flat chisel. This will do the same job as long as you are careful and work very delicately. Reshape the mouth, eye and any other areas that need working on. The beauty of working with this particular stone, Maltese limestone, is the immediacy that you can get to work using files, rasps and abrasives. On a harder stone you wouldn't be able to use these tools yet, and you would need to use the flat chisel to get as close as you can to the finished surface. So, because of the nature of this stone, you can skip this stage and start the finishing process by using a couple of grades of ordinary sandpaper. Personally, I prefer to keep using the chisels for as long as possible, so I'm in control and aware of the shapes I'm creating. Using abrasives can be deceptive, as you will alter planes and shapes without realising it. If you can invest in a small set of needle files, you will get an even better finish. These will allow you to work in detail with sharper edges and work on individual areas of unevenness until you are happy with the end result. They can be purchased at DIY stores and are very reasonably priced. A small set will usually contain a diverse range of shaped files that can be used in areas and different ways on your sculpture. scoring lines as well as filing and removing any areas. Use the flat surface of the tools to file the stone, the edges to scrape, and the end to gouge and almost draw into the stone. With practice, you will find which tools suit the way you work and the effects you want to create. You can undercut to create shadow, or gently smooth and take down areas. If you are working this soft stone, larger files can also be used, but be careful not to create flat areas. Be aware of what the file is doing and keep shaping and rounding with the tool rather than working in one area. Sometimes it's more effective to use the edge of the file rather than the flat face, to have more of a control technique. There are specially designed tools called rifflers, and these can be very useful for working the stone, but at this stage, not tools you need to possess. With this extremely soft stone, I'm using a small surf form, a tool more usually associated for working with wood or plaster. It will do a great job in getting your fish to the shape you want. Again, this tool can be purchased very cheaply at any DIY store or online. Press firmly down and using a sanding motion back and forward, but it is only the forward motion that removes the stone. It works just like a cheese grater. On this piece, I've decided to do the finishing with small files, working over the whole surface using the edge of one of the files to get a good finish. I'm working around the edges of the design, especially the fins. On a harder stone, we would need to do a lot of this work with small chisels. Very often, some of the gouges you have made with the claw or flat chisel mean you need to take the surface down a little further to get a good finish. You won't be aware of these recesses until you brush the surface quite vigorously. It's worth persevering at this stage and spending time working the surface. Occasionally you will get small shells or fossils appearing on the surface, and this adds to the beauty of the work. Relief always works well if you can exaggerate shape and create shadows to give a sense of depth. Scoring and cutting deeply in certain areas with the files around the mouth, head, fins and eye will achieve this. When you are happy with your design, you can start the sanding process. Using a couple of grades of sandpaper, take the surface down to as smooth a finish as you can get. Be careful not to smooth away any of the sharp lines you have created. These give the shadow effects that you want to keep. The contrast between the smooth fish and chiselled background are important as it allows the simple design to stand out. Remember, although this is a simple design, you may find the process difficult. With practice, this process becomes easier and you'll be able to concentrate more on the design. Don't try to produce an exact copy of this particular design, just use it as a guide. You will make mistakes and probably lose areas you wanted to keep. You can just alter the design accordingly, or maybe even go for the distressed look. The more you carve, the less errors you will make. But at the end of the day, it's about the satisfaction of you creating something by hand that is completely unique. If you'd like more information regarding my workshops, where to purchase tools and materials, or about your sculpture, email me at andrewworthington@hotmail.co.uk or go to my website www.andrewworthingtonart.com. A stack of concrete blocks makes a cheap but effective work base. You can change the height to suit. Make sure you use the heavy, not the lightweight blocks. To change the teeth in the claw, place the chisel on its side on a block with just the teeth overhanging. Use a lump hammer to tap the teeth or bit out. Replace the new bit in the end, then knock straight down until it's driven home.